Hello and welcome to this new show titled The Alvarez Project. I'm your host, Austin Alvarez. I'm a business owner, video production professional, ghost hunter, I guess, and podcaster, I guess. I mean, I haven't done it in a while, but this is a new show that I'm starting up, and I'm talking with a lot of creatives, business owners, video professionals like myself. Today's guest, arguably probably a home run right off the rip. Today's guest is very special. I've gotten to know them quite well over the past few years. I don't think you need an introduction, but I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction. I have with us today a man who is a video production professional of 25 years, cinematographer, musician, ghost hunter, TV personality, connoisseur of vegan delights. I don't know how you would explain that.
Sure.
We have Mr. Jay Wasley in the hot seat today. I was gonna say in studio, but this is quite literally your studio.
Right, yeah, I'm here most of the time.
Yeah, so I first wanted to kind of dive into that, where first of all, thank you for allowing us to use your studio.
Yeah,
and second of all, people that may be tuning in for the first time, I actually have I would like to think, a pretty good working relationship with Jay in terms of we do a lot of things together, running the studio, working with clients, stuff like that. So this interview is not going to be like normal interviews. And when I pitched it to you yesterday, you were like, oh, actually, I'm kind of excited because normally you're going to sit there and they're going to go, what's the most haunted thing you've ever experienced? No, I don't want to know any of that because I've already asked you that.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about you here.
You want to hear the real scary stories.
Jay Wasley,
about
who
production.
Yes, absolutely. Who's an American cinematographer, by the way, in April 2016. That's crazy to be in.
Yeah, that was like, I remember like growing up, I always alluded to like a musician growing up and like getting their name on the cover of Rolling Stone or something.
Yeah, or getting a
like,
Grammy or
right, like for someone,
which you do have, by the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, not. It's weird. I was associated with the project,
right?
So I got looped into it, but you know, I didn't.
He could have just rolled with, I have a Grammy, but he had to, be a decent human being.
You know,
of course.
But this was great. That happened when I took over. I stopped doing sound on Ghost Adventures, and I started being in charge of the cinematography. And at the time, it was with Mike Stodden, who was the other. Basically, we co-DP together. Like I'll shoot the interview section, like the first half of the show and all that, and kind of responsible for that. And then we have another DP that would shoot the reenactments and B-roll stuff. And so back then when we did it was him, Mike Stodden and I, and now it's Lauren Murphy and myself. Amazing.
So I don't want to quite jump into that yet. I do want to jump into, you've been a post-production, video production professional for 25 years. We were just looking before we started. How did you get into that world of video production, whether it be sound or video?
Honestly, my first love was music. So I started playing music in 5th grade. I remember we had a 5th grade talent show. Okay. And everyone's doing like, what is it? New Kids on the Block, like lip syncing dance routines, I love things like that. So me and my friends, we learned how to play Green Jelly's Three Little Pigs.
Okay.
Which,
I've heard that.
People probably don't know, but if you're like a metal person, you probably have heard of it. And then this was like, I grew up in the prime of MTV world. So it was always like music videos. I remember coming home from school every day. I would go to the record shop, the comic book shop, and then I'd come home and just watch music videos all day on MTV.
You're telling me they played music on MTV at one point?
Yeah, it was actually the music television.
Okay.
And I loved it. And that was like my prime of my creative birth, if you will. And I started playing in bands and learned how to play guitar. And then from there, I was like, well, I want to make music videos, like when I'm watching all the time, and this was like the grunge era. So it wasn't even like super fancy high-tech graphics. It was like sometimes raw and rough. And then my parents had one of those big VHS camcorders. So I remember taking that and I would just shoot music videos. And then I learned how to edit by getting 2 VCRs. So I would shoot footage and I would queue it up on the one VCR and then be like, all right, and then basically play record on the next VCR and then stop and then rewind, find the next clip I want to do. So then the second VCR was always like my master recording, basically.
Okay.
And that's how I learned how to edit, basically.
So you basically did like linear editing with extra steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. Yeah.
See, I'm way newer at to it than you are. So I've never had to learn linear editing. I'd like to go antiquing a lot, and I did find a linear editor.
Oh, right.
And I was tempted to get it, but I was like, what am I really going to?
I mean, I wasn't cutting film or anything like that, but like it was just using, VHS tapes, but yeah, that's how I basically learned how to do it. And then all through high school, I kept doing that, kept playing in bands and kept making music videos and just loved to do that. And then after high school, it was kind of like most people, like, what are you going to do now? What do you want to do? And I knew I wanted to do something creative. I felt, I don't know. I couldn't just sit and do a 9-to-5 job. Like I would go crazy doing that. So I wanted to try to pursue something in the arts. I remember I got denied from the Philadelphia, what was it, the Philadelphia or the University of Arts in Philadelphia. Remember I got denied there. So I was like, well, college.
Do they give you an honorary doctorate now though? Like
No.
I would maybe pursue that.
Reach out to them, be like, hey, look what I've done since. But,
you passed up on this.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I got rejected from that, and I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do? So then I was like, all right, maybe I should do something safe. And I actually went to school for photography originally at like a community college. First semester, the teacher ruined it for me.
really?
Yeah, she was basically like, if you're going to do this, you're going to basically work weddings and like bar mitzvahs and parties. Like that's all you're going to do as a photographer. Like
You know why?
That's your life.
She's a prime example of the saying, those who can do, those who can't teach.
Right.
So she's probably just upset that she couldn't cut it.
But she kind of killed it for me, unfortunately, which, I'm thankful earlier. I had a lot of great teachers that were inspiring, but she actually kind of did the complete opposite. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. And then I remember our final project, and this was like working in the dark room and making prints. And we had to do a theme, and I did like some really dark stuff, and it was like, I thought it was great. And then she gave me a C because she said my work was too cinematic. And I was just like, wait a minute, that doesn't mean like, wait, so it's still photography. Like even cinematography is still, you're taking pictures, but you're taking
Just a
24
lot
of
of
them in a second, like it's still the same concept. It's the same thing. But she said all my stuff looked too cinematic, and, she didn't fail me, but she gave me like a C, and I was just like, okay, like this is ridiculous. And
Now, did you hit her up afterwards and been like, hey, look?
no,
Oh, okay.
she probably doesn't even remember. I don't even know.
You were just another one she just churned and burned.
So then I basically was like, well, this is pointless. Like this killed it for me. So I got out of that, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't do art. I had a moment, and then I was like, well, maybe I'll do something with computers. I was really into computers. I grew up when computers first came out. So I was like from an early age, like on like an Apple IIe computer, like when back then you actually had to like code to run things and stuff like that. So I learned a lot of that. So I was like, oh, I'll go to school for computer programming. And then I went to a technical college for a year doing computer programming. And basically I was bored. I ended up like the teacher would fall asleep in class, like while like, we were working on projects. And then the kids in the class would come to me and be like, hey, how do we do this? And I was like helping them. I remember one time the teacher was like, cause we got in trouble for playing games cause everyone has a computer in front of them.
Yeah.
And like he called kids playing games. So we got in trouble. And then he was like, the only way you could possibly, I'll let you play a game in here is if you program it yourself. So then I went home that night and I programmed a game, and I came into the class and I gave every student a copy. And then while he was lecturing, we're all sitting there like playing the games, and he's like, that's it, you're all in trouble. And I'm like, no.
Well,
actually,
Professor,
this is a game I programmed. And he was like, what? And so that kind of was like, it was kind of a lackluster experience going through school. And then even with that, I realized that like, what I'm going to do, like programming, I'm going to be typing code 9 to 5 every day. Like, I liked it because it was like kind of creative. There's something to it, but I needed more of like actual creativity, not just typing code. So then from there, a buddy of mine was starting a pyrotechnic company. And this was all in New Jersey growing up. And he got trained. There was only one other person in the country that did what he did. And basically it was making electronic matches that they would sell to firework companies, rock blasting, the military, things like that.
Okay.
And this guy trained him, and then he wanted to start a company making it. So he brought me on, and it was him and I at first. We were the only ones doing this. And then that was my 9 to 5 job for a while, but it was with my friends, so it was fun. And we would basically make these electronic igniters, but it was the same 40-second to a minute process over and over again for an entire day of work. But it was fun because it was with friends, and it grew. But then at one point at this time, I was like, well, on the weekends I would help out different people. I'd find out there's friends that want to make a film, or there's some production that's just looking for people to help out. And then I would show up, we would go to meetings, and I end up being the camera operator because I already knew how to shoot. I had the concept of editing and lighting by that point. So I started being a camera operator and doing music. I knew how to record good sound, so I would also get sound jobs here and there. I use the term job loosely because they didn't always pay at first, or they pay next to nothing.
They gave you experience.
Exactly.
They gave you exposure.
Exactly. And it was just fun to do. I still had my regular job, and then on the weekends or nights or whatever, I would go do these things whenever I could and just try to get into any project I found out about. I would just try to get in on it somehow. And basically from there, it was crazy. I ended up going to, it's kind of a crazy story. I went to go for an internship with a company that was in Philadelphia that was looking for interns. I was like, oh, maybe that's a good route to go join a production company as an intern. So I go there for the internship, and then I'm talking to them, and I tell them how I do pyrotechnics now, and they got excited. And they were like, oh, do you know how to do squibs? And squibs is basically what the actors wear when they get shot. And it's like on a blood packet, it's a little explosive that you put under the clothes, and then it pops off and makes it look like they got shot. And they didn't ask me if I ever did it. They asked me if I knew how to do it.
So they were just like, we just need to know that you know how.
And I was like, yes, because I do. Because at that time, I was engulfed in filmmaking. So I read all the books. I had special effects books. I had camera books, sound, like everything. I was just engulfed in learning it all. Not in school by myself. And so I was like, yeah, I know how to do it. And they're like, awesome. Well, we're producing this movie in like 6 months or whatever, and we need a pyrotechnic guy to do these things. I was like, cool. So I didn't get the internship, but I got a job on a movie, like an actual feature film, major movie. And maybe a couple weeks later, they called me and they're like, hey, unfortunately the budget changed and they're cutting practical effects out. They're just going to do it digital. So like, we have to cut you loose. Oh. And I was like, oh, that sucks, but it's kind of how it goes. So I continued my job. And in my mind too, I was like, oh, like we're not shooting for 6 months, so I could figure out how to do this, right? So once they let me go, I forgot about it. Then about 6 months later, I get a phone call and they're like, hey, they changed their mind. They actually want the practical effects now, and we're shooting in 3 days. Yeah. Yeah. So I was just like, well, okay, sure, let's do it. And I ended up going to Philly. I stayed in their loft. They had like a big their production house, basically. They had like rooms up on the second floor. It was like a big loft. We kind of have
that here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could.
Could. I mean, they're bare bones, but we could do it.
Yeah, but so like it was like people staying in a loft, and then I just worked. I built. I had to cut out a piece of wall on the set and rig it with explosive because the scene was these two guys standing in front of a wall and get shot up. So I had to get the wall to blow up. I had to get them to blow up, and so I made a wall panel that I could just pop in on the day. And while I'm doing that, this is like now 2, 3 in the morning. We're shooting the next day of the scene. And I'm getting to a point where I'm like maybe packing all these explosives in the wall, and I run out of gunpowder. And I'm just like, oh man, like I don't have enough to finish what I need to finish. And then I didn't ask questions, but this guy comes stumbling in drunk that was staying there, like I said, 2, 3 in the morning. And I was like, hey, you don't happen to have any gunpowder, do you? And he's like, well, yeah, actually I got a case of shotgun shells in my trunk. And I was like, could I have some? He's like, sure. So he gives me a case of shotgun shells, and now I'm sitting there like cutting open shotgun shells and like opening them up and getting the gunpowder out.
Emptying out the pellets and the powder.
And I'm doing that, and I finally cut one open, but then as I cut it open, my X-Acto blade nicks the metal and it creates a spark, and this explodes right in my hands, right in front of me on the table. And everybody wakes up. They all come out of their rooms. They're all like freaking out. Like, what happened? What happened? Like there was an explosion. And it was like Saving Private Ryan. Like I had that like when everyone's like, Drew, are you okay? Are you all right? And I'm just like in shock looking, making sure I had all my fingers. And I was like, my nose is there. I was like, okay. And then it was like, and it came back. I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. I'm like, I'm okay. And then I finished, and then maybe got like a couple hours of sleep and went to set the next day and did the special effects, and then it went good. And then that was like my first like major film, like big set. This was, I don't know what the final budget was, but I'm sure it was like a couple $1 million budget, which is still kind of small technically, but for me this was like, wow, like I'm on a multi-million-dollar movie here,
Yeah.
And so it just kind of kept going from there, and
now you're here, and now you are traveling every other week for Ghost Adventures.
Well, it's funny because technically, so the production company that hired me for that, this was like 2001, 2002, somewhere around there. It was
for this first movie.
For that first movie.
Okay.
It was a company called Backseat Conceptions, ran by, and they became good friends. Like, we stayed in touch. It's my friend Doug Sackman, who unfortunately passed away recently. He was a big like special effects guy. He worked in all like the trauma films and things like that. And we ended up doing tons of projects together later on. But after that, like, we kind of didn't hear anything for a while. And then if you fast forward from like 2002 to like around 2008, 9, maybe somewhere around there, he called me. And, like, we probably stayed on touch a little bit, but like, he called me around then and was like, hey, we're producing this reality TV show in Philadelphia, and we have like 3 or 4 crews we're putting together. And he's like, you also do sound, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, we need a sound guy to do this show. And basically we're following tow trucks around Philadelphia. It's at the time it was for TLC, but then we ended up shooting it, and then they bumped it up to Discovery. And so
was that a subsidiary of Discovery,
at one point? Yeah,
Discovery
owns TLC. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so he was like, oh, we need a sound guy. I was like, sure, I'll do it. So then we kind of reconnected, and they hired me as a sound guy. We did that show, which was absolutely insane. We had bulletproof vests. Like, we were basically in the worst areas of Philadelphia, listening to police scanners, and then we would just know there's a wreck, and we would just hop in this car or the trucks with these tow truck drivers, and they would literally race to get to the scene, and whoever gets there first gets the job. So a lot of times 2 opposing companies would arrive at the same time. They fight, they argue. There was people killed, like they killed rival companies, things like that. So we did that show, and that show pretty much ended because one of the guys we were working with, not one of the main guys, but one of the guys that works under them, actually got killed by an opposing tow truck company guy. They got into a fight, and he ran him over in the parking lot with his tow truck, backed over and ran over multiple times.
Oh my God.
And then so we shut down after that for a little bit, for a few weeks, and we came back. But when we came back, we would show up to Rex, and the police would show up and be like, no, we're not letting you do this. We're going to call rotation, which is what they should really do. But because Philadelphia being such a busy city, they just let these tow truck companies race there and just clean it up. But after the murders and after all this, drama that's been going on, they were like, we're going to enforce the rotation, which means they call the list of tow truck companies. So they start at the top. That company has 30 minutes. They don't show up. They call the next company. Then they just kind of go down the list. The next accident, they call the next person on the list. So it's supposed to give everyone a fair chance to get jobs,
Right.
So they kind of did that, and that kind of killed the show. The show aired. We did 6 episodes of it. And then,
it did air.
Yeah.
So I didn't know it. I thought it just lived in purgatory.
It aired on Discovery, and they did 6 full episodes.
We're going to have to watch this.
Yeah.
We're going to have to go find this now and go watch it.
It's called Wreck Chasers.
Wreck Chasers.
You see me occasionally. If you know when the Paul's at the right spot, you see me randomly in the background a few times.
Scared probably for your life. Like, what am I getting myself
Well, that's
into?
the thing. We would listen to police scanners, and we just know there's a wreck. So we show up and be like, oh, this is a wreck because it was a stolen car, and now there's a police shootout going on. Or, it was a wreck, and then it was a stolen car. It was like we never knew what it actually was. So we just roll up on this, and not knowing what to expect. But I apparently did a really good job as a sound guy. I never backed down. I was in there the whole time. And the main company that produced the show out of New York, so my buddy's company was like the local fixer company, basically, that put together the local crews. But the main company was based out of New York, and then they mentioned to me, they're like, hey, we have this other reality show called Ghost Adventures, and we want to bring on a full-time sound guy, could you do it? This shoots in like 2 weeks or whatever. And I was like, yeah, sure.
You're like, I need a job.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, this one's ending. So then they put me on that, and they flew me out here to Vegas, and, the production manager picked me up, and we drove out to the middle of the desert and went to Goldfield Hotel and filmed my first episode of Ghost Adventures.
And here we are, almost 20 years later at this point?
16, I think, something like that. Yeah.
So let me ask, because if they really want to know what it's like being talent on Ghost Adventures, there's millions of interviews they can find. What I want to know is what is, and you don't have to, obviously there's certain things you can't share, but what is production like on Ghost Adventures? Because it's really, when you guys are in lockdown, it's just you 4, right?
Yeah, it's only the 4 of us. We shoot it ourselves. We film each other, and we just lack of a better word, we kind of wing it. Like we have an idea, we have a plan of things we want to try, experiments we want to do. And at this point we have a routine of different things we know, but every location's different and we just go. Like we don't do things and reset up. We don't do big setups. Like we just literally just do it. Just the four of us running around in there doing what we do, and what you see is really what it is. Obviously it's edited out downtime. It's edited out,
Sure.
Hours of just kind of nothing happening, things like that. But really it's just us doing that. For the first half of the show, kind of similar, but we have a crew that then films with us. So we're able to do a little bit more. We do more like the history and research, things like that. But even that, when we do walkthroughs, I'll film that. So I'm in the location and I'm filming it, but also, being a part of, because we're always investigating, even when we're, just doing interviews. So it's kind of really like, and comparatively to other TV shows, it's super small. Like even that crew is very small. Like we only have, like 2 other camera operators and, a PA, a sound person, and our production manager. And that's really kind of it.
I would say sometimes, George, we've had bigger crews than that. We don't even have a budget.
Right.
But so what I always feel like shows miss out on in terms of like this, like interviews and stuff, is like they don't get really nitty gritty. So are you allowed to talk about the equipment? Like,
Sure,
what are you using? What are you filming the show with?
So we think now, trying to think what we originally started. It was originally it was like an old Sony camera that was originally shot on. And then when I took over cinematography, I helped switch it over, and we just shot on the Canon C300s.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we shot those for the longest time.
Which is like their cinema camcorder, or not camcorder, but their cinema bodies, right?
Yeah, but it's great for like running gun stuff. It has like built-in NDs, things like that you need on the fly.
Right.
And then just maybe the last 2 years, we finally switched over to the Sony FX6s.
Shout out FX6
right,
sponsor, please.
Yeah. So we're using those now, and Sony lenses, and then basically the last, I don't even know how many times, but at one point I switched all our lighting because we used all tungsten and plug-in lights. But sometimes you're in the middle of nowhere where there's no power, or the power source is far away. So I kind of worked out, like, all right, what lights can we use? And now everything we have can be battery powered.
Oh, so, like D-tap from like a V mount, or
from like V mounts. That we all use all V mount batteries.
Okay.
So it's all every light we have can be plugged in, but we can also run everything off batteries now.
Okay,
which helped out a lot and was able to help us get more interesting shots. Be able to light a scene out in the middle of the forest where before like we wouldn't. It would just be all spotlight, just like on camera light type stuff.
So you're not using the FX6s for the investigation, though?
No.
Are you? What are you using for those? Are you allowed to say?
Yeah, I mean, they're just the main ones we use are just Sony. I mean, and I assume I could talk about because you could see it. Like if you pause, we don't hide anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
I just didn't know if it was that's a proprietary camera that I built.
No, it's all stuff you can get. I mean, maybe they're hard. They're getting harder to find because honestly, like most of the ones we use are like just a Sony Handycam, like. But
Gotcha, okay.
There's not a lot of cameras that
like
shoot
the night
vision.
shot on it.
A lot of them don't do night vision anymore. And then the Canon XF105s we use for those are like my nerve center cams that I bring back to nerve center.
Gotcha.
And I like those because the handy cams are just little, they're like for home movie type stuff. But the XF105s give you like BNC output and better bit rates.
And some more IO.
Right, and then you could plug in XLR mics if you want, so it gives you a little more options out in the field than just pick up in the store Sony Handycam kind of thing.
Gotcha. So I remember one time I asked you a while ago, and I think you were just daydreaming, because you even daydreamed the other day. You're like, oh, maybe one day I'll sell everything here and run an RE system.
Right.
But I think that's very wishful thinking.
Right.
Because I do know that they do make like A7 IIIs and A7S IIIs with the sensor removed that prevents IR.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, have you ever used those out on location?
Or? I don't think the Sonys. We have a few Canon like 5D something or other that have been basically hacked and taken the IR filter out. So, or you could shoot UV IR light stuff with it. So we have those. We have GoPros that also have been hacked that take out the IR. Basically, behind every lens, there's a little IR filter. So depending on the system, if you can break that open without breaking it,
right,
you can usually get the IR filter out. And then once you put it back together, now it shoots in infrared.
Interesting, because so like I've had to explain to people who've come to me before. I've had people legitimately come to me and be like, "Oh, I want to get that, that ghost TV show look." And I'm like, "Okay, well, you need specific cameras,
Right? Yeah.
for those." They're like, "Well, no, I have my cinema camera." I'm like, "Yeah, no, you can do all the first half of the show, like that, but you can't do the second half without
you need
it."
Specialty cameras, and honestly, too, like to do it right, you need to understand lighting differently too.
Yeah.
Like I learned a lot of, I learned basic film lighting, using regular lights. And now, but IR reacts differently. So like we use IR lights, but it bounces differently, it reflects differently, it shows up in things differently. So it kind of had to relearn how to light for an IR based world.
I never think about that when I've used IR. I know, I have basic lights that just attach to the camera, but I've never been like, what's the temperature we're using? I mean, are you worried about temperature when you're doing? Okay.
It doesn't say like that doesn't
this
really
is at 5600 guys. The ghosts only appear at 4100. Maybe there you go. Maybe that's something you had to try. It's just different lighting. Maybe you can get it to work. So, before we end the show, I do want to talk about this, getting in American Cinematographer magazine. What was that like? You kind of went into a little bit at the beginning of the show. So this is like, for anybody who's unaware, this is basically Rolling Stone, but for the production and camera world. So like I'm a member of this now, and I get I get it delivered every month.
Yeah, I've been so even before this, I had a subscription, and this is, I mean, if you're starting out and you want to become a cinematographer, this is, sorry schools, but this is better than school, honestly. Watch movies, read American Cinematographer, and get yourself on sets. Even if you're a PA,
I would argue that too. Like, as somebody who's currently finishing out film school, or even though it's not really a film degree, it's a digital cinematography degree. Okay. I would agree that like I've been a professional for 5 years at this point, only been in school for a year or two. But I came into it pretty much arguably able to like finish the degree already because of just learning on the fly or on location.
That's the way. And it doesn't matter. Like I said, even if you're just a production assistant, but you can get on a set, you're doing things that you might not necessarily want to do, but you can still see what everyone's doing. Yeah. And I think what really took off for me back in the day was more sound work. Like I did a lot of camera and lighting work, but I think sound is what I kind of blew up in for the longest time. And even just doing sound, I learned how to be on set. I learned how to light. I learned because I would watch, and especially as a sound guy, I'm set up and I'm waiting for lighting. I'm waiting for the camera department to finish setting up. So I'm just sitting there watching them, and that's how I ended up getting a lot of work too, because they would be messing up and I'd be like, oh, you could fix that by doing this, or, and you don't just step on people's toes, but once they get to a point where they're like, we're kind of stuck, any ideas? And then, you're able to throw out ideas. And then there's been many jobs that I started as a sound guy, and then I ended up, the next project they did, I ended up being the cinematographer for, So it's, for anyone that's starting, I think it is, just get on sets, read American Cinematographer. There's other books out there too that are good that can help, and watch movies too. Like, and don't just watch them just to zone out and watch it as if you're in school. Watch it and break down every shot. Be like, why did they choose that shot? How is that shot lit? Even pause it. I'll pause movies sometimes and look and be like, okay, there's a light this way. They have another source up here. And you can kind of break down the shot and kind of figure out what they're doing, and, learning what camera movement does to a scene, what kind of emotions that creates when the camera moves, and what kind of lighting can cause different reactions to the audience, So I think it's all right there. You just have to put in the time and pay attention to it. But with American Cinematographer, it was awesome because it was, like I said, it was like being on Rolling Stone as a musician. And from what they've told me, I think that we're the first reality show DPs to ever be featured in the magazine.
Wow, that's an accomplishment that. No, I guess
like I never fact checked it. So like, sorry if there's one random one that they
comments
said
and be like, well, actually the guys from Survivor were featured in 09.
So I mean, I swear the writer told me that. So, but then it was cool because they said that they never usually do that, but then they noticed the look of the show changed, and the style of the shots kind of changed, and we were putting more cinematic type stuff. We were using like dolly systems just to get motion, and just kind of trying to up the production value, even though we had such a small crew and a fixed budget. Like, we would try to still make it bigger, make it look more cinematic. And they noticed, and they did the whole write-up. It was awesome because after this, they invited me to the American Cinematographer Awards.
Oh, wow.
They invited me to come to the Clubhouse in LA. So I went out there. I met Roger Deakins there.
Is that the museum too? They have, because I know that I've been.
They have I wouldn't call it a museum. Like they have a room that has like some old stuff. It's basically
there's
ASC.
a whole museum now for ASC.
Right, maybe yeah. There's an ASC Clubhouse, which basically once you're a member, you go there and you can hang out and like they have events and things like that.
Which we were talking about beforehand. It's like you have to have 3 referrals from people in there, and then it's still like 25,000 a year or something crazy.
Yeah, so I got to go to the Clubhouse. I met Roger Deakins at the Clubhouse,
awesome.
which was amazing. He's one of my favorite, most probably one of the most inspiring.
Right, walk up to him. What camera are you using? Right. I'm using a
no, it was actually funny.
C300.
Because I brought a friend of mine, and I didn't think of it, and obviously there was a point where like we took a picture together, and then my buddy went to take a picture with him because I was allowed to bring somebody, and I brought him, and he was like, it was just a selfie, but he's like, can you take it? To Roger Deakins, and he's like, sure, whatever, sure, and it was just a selfie, but he's like, I got a photo of me by Roger Deakins, and I was like, oh, that's actually
that's like having like Steven Spielberg like direct your video real quick. Right. It's like I got Steven Spielberg to give me direction.
He told me to move over like 2 inches to stay in frame, but
he's like, can you imagine you're sitting there like, hey Roger, do you mind taking this photo of me? And he's like, yeah. Do you want to Dutch it? And you're like,
right.
At this point, you can do whatever. Like, I'll just
hold on.
do
Let's
whatever.
Get a techno crane in here
for an iPhone. All right, Danny Boyle, relax. Right. We're not doing the 28 years later thing.
But yeah, and then after that, I stayed. It was like a whole weekend thing at the ASC, and then they invited me to the awards, so I had to wear a tuxedo and do the whole red carpet thing and go sit and watch the American Cinematographer Awards, which was pretty awesome.
You weren't up for an award.
No,
it was just like a formal invite because you were in the magazine.
Yeah.
Okay. I was imagining they're like, yeah, we're going to put you up for best cinematographer. And then your competition is Roger Deakins. You're like, well, that was cool.
Yeah.
Not getting
There's
that.
not a chance. But
And then they give it to you, the upset of the history of cinematography. But okay, so one last question before we end out. And that is, there's a ton of people. I mean, I was even asking this question at one point myself. If somebody wants to get to where you are in terms of not just being on TV, but as being a cinematographer in a professional capacity, what would you tell them to do?
Don't give up. It's not always fast. It doesn't always happen right away. I grew up with an amazing creative community of friends and people, and a lot of them are still amazing. Some of the most amazing artists I ever seen, but they kind of stopped. They didn't push it, and now they're just working jobs, and I'm not knocking it. If they're happy in their life, that's great. But like, it didn't happen quick enough, maybe, for some people. Like some people think like, oh, like I'm going to do this and, the next month I'm going to be rich and famous and traveling the world. And it doesn't always work like that. There are a rare few that do have that overnight success, but like that's not the norm, and even for myself, like before I got, I remember I worked like regular day jobs here and there. But I got to a point where I was like, all right, like, I don't want to do this. And I got offered a movie feature film, and I was doing sound for it, but it was like a 2-month shoot. So I had to quit my day job. Like I remember going in and asking,
it's like
I was
touring.
I was like, hey, could I have 2 months off? And they just laughed at me, and they're like, no. And I was like, all right, well, this is my 2 weeks notice then.
And the 14th day is today. So I won't see you guys tomorrow.
This is retroactively
my 2 weeks. Yeah. Well, this is going to be my 2 weeks, or I was going to work in a little bit more.
So then I went and did sound on this movie, but also another thing is to be smart with your money. Cause you don't work every day. Sometimes you don't work every month. Like there's dry spells at times, and it's a competitive business, and like you have to be prepared to be able to get through that. And I think that's what stops a lot of people is they think, oh, I'm going to be making money all the time. I got some good gigs. And then all of a sudden you don't have work for a month or two. And then you're like, oh, I have to now go work at Home Depot or Starbucks or wherever. You just got to go get a job. And then you kind of get stuck in that regular job, and then you're like, oh, I can't take that other gig now because I'm already working over here that week, or But with me, I got that job, and basically what I was making on the movie is what I would make in about 6 or 7 months at my regular job.
But this was only a 2-month shoot?
Right.
Oh, tremendous.
So I was like, okay, but I was smart, and I still paid myself monthly what I would have been making. So I wasn't like, oh, I got this money now and just like spend it all over the place.
I worked at my normal job, but I have 7 months of working at my normal job.
So then 7 minus 2, so that gave me about 5 months where I'm like, technically I could live for 5 months and not have to do anything. I don't have to do a single job and I could still pay my bills, live exactly how I'm living for 5 months with carefree. But in that 5 months, I didn't just sit back. I networked. And that's when you can do free jobs. You can do stuff because I'm like, my bills are paid. But then you network, you meet people, you send out your resume, you just call people, you touch base with friends, you put everything out. And honestly, it was literally like, all right, bank account's just about empty. Like I probably only got a couple weeks left. And then I got a phone call for the next gig finally. And I was like, whew, all right. And then I
on to the next one.
And here thankfully, we are now. Been going since.
Awesome. So, what do you have coming up next for you, Jay?
We're filming a whole new season of Ghost Adventures still. There's always random projects. I'm kind of there's a documentary coming up soon. I don't even know what it is, but I'm going to be working on it and supplying equipment. You're also like producing some movies that some people have made in this room, and they're not out yet, but they're on IMDb. Oh, right. Yeah,
I gave myself an IMDb. I gave you a credit too, so like I don't know why you're complaining.
Right. Yes, I mean that's the thing with Simple Equations here. We always happy to do different projects. There's always projects that are in the works. That's the thing too. It takes time. It takes a while to put all that together, but we're always trying to push new things and have different movies, script ideas, things like that. Talking to different people about some music videos soon. And then honestly, I'm just putting a lot of time into actually creating music again. Like back to my first original love was making music and played in bands, and I've always been doing it, but it's been on the back burner a little bit. So I'm kind of trying to put a little more effort and time into like recreating and, hopefully be putting out some new music soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I first want to say thank you. Just for the opportunities that I've been able to have thanks to you, like this room, like the connections we've had together. I do also want to say thank you for coming on the show today. We'll have to bring you back and do way more of a deep dive.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure people are going to see this and be like, oh, I want to hear more about the equipment that they use and not the ghost hunting equipment. Right. I want to hear what Mike Jay is using. So if you have any of those questions, leave them down in the comments below. But thank you again, Jay.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's about. I think, in this field, there's too much competition. Like when I first started, people were like, didn't want to help me at all. And it was like, I want to make movies. And they're like, all right, unless you got $1 million or the crazy insurance and all this stupid money to rent equipment, like it's not going to happen. And I actually had professionals that are like, you don't want to do this. Don't even bother.
You don't
and I was just like, and I was like, I don't want to be that way. I don't think that's the right way. And I always said, like, if I get to a point where like my bills are paid, like I'm happy to help other people and help them, start their creative journey or get their projects off the ground. And I think we should do all that. We should all support each other as artists.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again to Jay. Thank you, George, our amazing studio producer and engineer. I don't know what I'd do without him. Probably suffer more. But thank you again, everybody watching. Go ahead, like, subscribe. Let us know who else you want us to talk to, and we'll see you guys on the next one.